My family wants me to forgive my brother for stealing $50,000 from me, and now he's blackmailing me with false claims of abuse unless I pay him to stay silent. The day I realized my brother had stolen $50,000 from me, I thought I was having a panic attack. My bank account was practically my safety net, savings I had worked on for years to pay off my student loans and maybe even invest in a small business one day. But that safety net was gone, and the worst part was the thief wasn't some random hacker or stranger. It was Jason, my own brother. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon when I checked my bank balance, just as I did every week. The number staring back at me was impossible. My heart rate spiked, and for a second, I thought it must be a mistake. Surely there had been an error, some glitch in the system, right? I refreshed the page, my palms sweaty, but the balance didn't change. Zero. Not a single cent left in the account that had once held $50,000. Frantically, I scrolled through the transaction history. That's when I saw it. 2 massive withdrawals made over the past 3 weeks. The first one was for $20,000, and the second, $30,000. Both went straight to Jason. No fake company, no hidden trail, just my brother's name plastered on the transfer. My gut twisted as I stared at the screen. Jason, the same brother who I had once trusted enough to help him build credit, had taken advantage of my trust and emptied my savings. I couldn't believe it. I sat there in shock, my mind racing. I had given him access to my account a few months back. He claimed he needed help getting his finances in order, and like a fool, I thought I was doing the right thing. I figured it was temporary, that he was trying to get his life together. He'd always been reckless with money menace 29 years old, still couch surfing, bouncing between dead-end jobs. But this was unforgivable. My phone slipped out of my hand, and I just sat there, frozen. Jason hadn't even tried to hide what he did. He knew I'd find out eventually, but I had a sick feeling he thought I wouldn't have the guts to confront him. He wasn't just stupid, he was calculating. I immediately dialed his number. No answer, of course. Jason had always been good at avoiding conflict when he knew he was in the wrong. I left a message, barely able to keep my voice steady. Jason, you've got 24 hours to call me back. I know what you did. You better have a damn good reason or this is going to get ugly. I spent the next few hours pacing around my apartment, alternating between rage and disbelief. I wanted to believe there had to be some explanation, something that would make sense of the insanity. But deep down, I knew better. Jason had always been a master manipulator, and this time, he'd gone too far. The next day, I got a message from my parents asking me to come over for dinner. The timing couldn't have been more obvious. They knew something was up. Jason must have run to them, spinning the situation to his advantage. I had no doubt he'd already gotten to them, softening the blow before I could even tell them the truth. But I wasn't about to let him get away with this. When I arrived at my parents' house that evening, the tension hit me the moment I walked in the door. My mom, 58, and dad, 60, were sitting at the kitchen table, trying to look composed. Jason was already there, loving casually with a smug look on his face, as if he'd been waiting for me. My blood boiled just looking at him. "Thanks for coming," my mom said quietly, her voice strained. "We need to talk." I didn't even sit down. Talk? There's nothing to talk about. Jason stole $50,000 from me. That's a crime. My dad spoke next, his tone much too calm for the situation. "Let's not make this bigger than it has to be. We're family. We can work this out." I shot him a look of disbelief. "Work it out?" He took everything I had. "How do you work out grand larceny?" Jason finally spoke up, casually leaning back in his chair like he didn't have a care in the world. "I was going to pay you back. You didn't have to freak out." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Pay me back? With what money, Jason? You don't even have a job. Or did you think I'd just forget $50,000 disappeared?" Mom reached out, trying to calm me. "Honey, I know this is hard, but he made a mistake. We all make mistakes. Maybe if we just talk this through." I cut her off, my voice rising. "This isn't some mistake you can just brush under the rug, Mom. He stole from me, and I want my money back. Now." Jason's expression hardened. "You're acting like I'm some kind of criminal. It's not like I killed someone." I glared at him, feeling the fury rise in my chest. No, you didn't kill someone. You just ruined my life. Same thing. Then came the bombshell, the moment that would change everything. Jason's voice dropped lower, calm but cold. You really want to make this public? Fine. Go ahead. But if you do, I'll tell everyone what you did when we were kids. The room went dead silent. I stared at him, confusion mixing with anger. What the hell are you talking about? He gave me a sly smile, a look that sent a chill down my spine. You remember the stuff you used to do to me when Mom and Dad weren't around. Or maybe you don't, but once I start talking, people are going to wonder. You sure you want that? For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Was he seriously threatening me? I looked at my parents, expecting them to step in to call him out on his blatant lies. But they didn't say a word. They just sat there, awkward and uncomfortable, like they couldn't decide whose side to take. I stood there, feeling my world tilt on its axis. My brother wasn't just a thief. He was a manipulator, a liar willing to destroy me to cover his tracks. I felt like I was drowning. How the hell was I supposed to fight this? Before I could say another word, Jason added one final twist of the knife. You got 48 hours to figure it out. Pay me what I need, and we both walk away. No cops, no accusations. Think about it. I left my parents' house that night, my mind spinning. Jason wasn't just asking for forgiveness. He was blackmailing me, and if I didn't give in, he'd ruin me with lies I couldn't prove were false. The worst part, my parents might just believe him. I drove home that night with Jason's words echoing in my head. My brother, my own flesh and blood, was threatening to destroy my life unless I gave him more money. And it wasn't just about the $50,000 he had already stolen. It was his audacity to make up lies about me, twisted claims of childhood abuse, and use them as leverage. How did we get here? How did I not see this coming? By the time I got to my apartment, it felt like I had stepped into some kind of twisted nightmare. My body was running on adrenaline, my hands shaking as I locked the door behind me. I couldn't stop replaying the conversation, couldn't stop thinking about how Jason had manipulated my parents, how they just sat there, letting him spew his lies like it was no big deal. I collapsed onto the couch, my head in my hands. I had two options, neither of them good. I could pay Jason and let him get away with this, or I could refuse and risk him going public with his disgusting accusations. And the worst part, in this world, perception mattered more than truth. People wouldn't care whether he was lying or not. The damage would be done the second his story got out. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Jason. $50K by the end of the week, or you know what happens. I'm not playing. I threw the phone across the room, watching it bounce off the coffee table and hit the floor with a soft thud. I couldn't breathe. Jason didn't just want the money back. He wanted more. He was treating this like some sick business transaction, like he could blackmail his own sister and walk away with a payday. I didn't sleep that night. I kept pacing, thinking about what I could do. Could I go to the police? But how would that look? The minute Jason made his accusations, the investigation would get messy. People would question my character, and even though I had nothing to hide, there would always be that shadow of doubt hanging over me. It wouldn't matter that he had no evidence. The accusation itself would be enough to ruin my reputation at work, with friends, with family. The next morning, I decided I needed advice. There was only one person I could turn to who might actually understand the gravity of what Jason was pulling. My best friend Rachel, 32F. She and I had been close since college, and she knew about Jason's history of messing up and me having to clean it up. But this was different. I didn't know if she'd believe me at first, but I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy, that Jason was as unhinged as I thought. I met Rachel at a coffee shop a few blocks away from my apartment. She took one look at me and immediately knew something was wrong. What happened? You look like you haven't slept in days, she said, frowning as she sipped her coffee. I sat down across from her, barely holding myself together. It's Jason. He stole from me. Her face hardened. What do you mean, stole? Like, money? I nodded, the words coming out fast and bitter. $50,000. From my savings. And when I confronted him, he threatened me. He's blackmailing me, Rachel. He's saying if I don't pay him another $50,000, He'll tell everyone I abused him when we were kids. Rachel's eyes widened in shock. What? He can't be serious. That's insane. I wish he wasn't. But you know Jason. He's not bluffing. He knows how to twist things, how to get people to believe his version of events. Rachel leaned in, her voice low. But this is different, right? He can't just make something like that up. People will see through him. I shook my head. You don't get it. The minute he says it, people will start to wonder. Even if it's not true, the accusation alone could wreck everything. My job, my reputation. I don't know what to do. I can't pay him, but I also can't let him ruin my life. Rachel looked like she wanted to scream. This is F up, even for Jason. You have to go to the police. He stole from you. You can prove that, right? I don't know. I gave him access to my account months ago. It's not like he hacked into it. Technically, I gave him permission. My voice broke as I said it, realizing how stupid I had been. I trusted him, and now he's using that against me. Rachel sat back in her chair, thinking. Okay, let's say you go to the police. You still have to deal with his lies. If he starts spreading that rumor, it'll get ugly fast. But what if you could get ahead of it? I frowned, not following. What do you mean? What if you expose him first? Go to your parents, your friends, hell, even your boss, and tell them what he's doing before he gets the chance to spread his lies. If you show them you're the victim, they might believe you over him. I wanted to believe Rachel was right, but I knew Jason too well. He'll spin it. He's already convinced my parents that I'm overreacting. If I go public, it could backfire. And even if it doesn't, it won't get me my money back. Rachel leaned in again, more serious now. Look, I know this is hard, but you can't just sit here and do nothing. You need to protect yourself, and the best way to do that is to take control of the situation. If Jason's threatening you, that means he's scared. He knows he F up, and he's trying to cover his tracks. But you don't have to let him. Her words made sense, but the fear still gnawed at me. What if it didn't work? What if Jason's lies spread faster than the truth? My whole life could be destroyed because of his greed and desperation. But the idea of giving him more money, of rewarding him for stealing from me and blackmailing me, that was unbearable. I went back to my apartment that night, still wrestling with what to do. Rachel's advice stuck with me, but I wasn't ready to make any decisions yet. My phone buzzed again, another message from Jason. TikTok. 50K by Friday, or it all comes out. I stared at the message, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about my life, my future. Jason was willing to burn it all down just to get what he wanted. And if I didn't find a way to stop him, he'd take everything from me. The following morning, I woke up to something even worse. An email. From Jason. Only this time, it wasn't just a direct threat to me. It was sent to several family members and a few of my friends. The subject line read, "The truth about Emily." My blood ran cold as I opened it. Everyone deserves to know what really happened between Emily and me when we were kids. For years, I've kept this quiet because I didn't want to cause a scene, but I can't stay silent anymore. The things she did to me behind closed doors. It was abuse, plain and simple. I'm not looking for pity, I just want the truth out there. My vision blurred as I read his lies, his twisted version of events. Jason had actually done it. He pulled the trigger, and there was no turning back. When I finished reading Jason's email, my hands were trembling so badly that I almost dropped my phone. It wasn't just the fact that he'd gone through with it. He'd actually sent out a public accusation about me. The worst part was the people copied on the email. Family members, a few of our mutual friends, even a couple of coworkers I hadn't spoken to in years. Jason wasn't just threatening me anymore. He was launching an all-out attack. The phone rang. My mom. I stared at the screen, my heart racing, unsure whether to pick up or throw the phone across the room again. I finally hit accept and brought the phone to my ear. "Emily," she said, her voice tight, like she'd been crying. "We need to talk." I sat down slowly, bracing myself. "I saw the email, Mom." Her breath hitched. I don't know what to say. Why would Jason send something like that? Is there any truth to it? That question, that F-ing question, hit me harder than I expected. Did she really think I was capable of something so twisted? I could feel the heat rising in my chest, anger and betrayal mixing together. Are you seriously asking me that? Mom, it's all lies. You know that. You know me. You raised me. She was quiet for a moment, and then came the thing I feared the most. I don't know what to believe anymore. Your brother wouldn't lie about something like this. I think we should all sit down and talk as a family. I want to scream. Jason had already twisted her perception, planted the seed of doubt. My own mother was wavering, unsure if her daughter was a monster. There's nothing to talk about. Jason's blackmailing me, and now he's trying to ruin my life. You really think I'm capable of doing what he's claiming? There was a long pause, and then she sighed. I just think we need to sort this out privately. No police, no public drama. We can't have this mess hanging over the family, Emily. I was furious. Of course, that's what you care about. The family's reputation. Never mind the fact that your son stole $50,000 from me and is now accusing me of something horrific just to cover his own ass. Lower your voice, she hissed, suddenly defensive. You don't understand how this looks from the outside. If Jason's telling the truth, he's not. I interrupted, my voice cracking with frustration. Why can't you see that? He's manipulating you. He always has. Emily, she said softly, like she was speaking to a child. You know your brother has had a hard life. He's been through a lot. Maybe we haven't been fair to him over the years. Maybe you need to give him some grace. Grace, that word made my blood boil. She was talking about grace, about giving Jason the benefit of the doubt after everything he'd done. She wanted me to just roll over, let him take everything from me because he was the baby of the family. It was always the same. Jason could do no wrong. I was the one who was supposed to hold it all together. I'm not giving him anything, Mom, I said, barely keeping my composure. He's blackmailing me, lying about me. If you want to take his side, fine. But don't expect me to be part of this family if you do. I hung up before she could respond. Tears of frustration and rage welled up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. There wasn't time to fall apart. Jason had declared war, and I needed to fight back before he completely destroyed my life. Within minutes, my phone started lighting up with messages. Some from relatives who had seen Jason's email, others from old friends. Most of them were cautious, asking if I was okay, if there was any truth to what Jason had said. A few were more blunt, shocked, demanding answers. I could feel the walls closing in. People were already starting to believe him. All it took was one false accusation, and suddenly I was a villain in my own story. The next few days were hell. I could barely leave my apartment without feeling like everyone was watching me, judging me, whispering behind my back. Jason hadn't even tried to contact me since sending that email. He didn't need to. The damage was done. I was being slowly suffocated by rumors and innuendo, and he was sitting back, waiting for me to cave. Rachel came over that night to check on me. When I opened the door, I could see the worry in her eyes. She hugged me the second she stepped inside. I've been getting calls all day, she said, shaking her head. People asking if I knew about the stuff Jason's claiming. I pulled away, crossing my arms over my chest. Do they believe him? She hesitated, and that was enough of an answer. Some do, some don't. You know how people are with stuff like this. They want to believe the worst. The thought of my friends, people I'd known for years, thinking I was capable of hurting anyone, let alone my own brother, made me sick. Jason was winning. He was dragging me through the mud, and I was powerless to stop it. I can't just sit here and let him do this to me, I said, pacing the living room. There has to be a way to turn this around to expose him for the liar he is. Rachel watched me carefully, biting her lip. I've been thinking about that too. There might be one way. I stopped pacing and looked at her. What do you mean? She hesitated, then lowered her voice. You said Jason doesn't have a job, right? He's been bouncing from couch to couch, living off handouts. I don't think he's just desperate for money. He's desperate for survival. What if we dig into his life, find something on him that can ruin him before he ruins you? I frowned, uncertain. You mean? Fight fire with fire. Rachel nodded, her expression hard. Exactly. Look, I know this isn't who you are, but Jason's playing dirty, And if you want to survive this, you might have to stoop to his level. Find something that can tear him down, something worse than what he's claiming about you. If we can prove he's got skeletons in his closet, no one will believe his lies." I sat down, feeling the weight of her words. It was a dark, ugly idea, digging up dirt on my own brother. But what other choice did I have? He'd already crossed every line imaginable. If I didn't fight back, he'd destroy me. Rachel leaned forward, her eyes serious. "This isn't about revenge. It's about survival, Emily. You need to protect yourself." I nodded slowly, realizing she was right. Jason had started this war, and I wasn't going to be his victim anymore. The next day, Rachel and I began to dig. We called in favors, reached out to people who had crossed paths with Jason over the years. We combed through his social media, old emails, anything we could find that might show a crack in his armor. And it wasn't long before we found it, a trail of debt, unpaid loans, and shady dealings that painted a very different picture of Jason's life. He'd been borrowing money from everyone, friends, ex-girlfriends, even a few shady loan sharks. None of it was ever paid back. His entire life was built on lies and manipulation, and the more we uncovered, the more we realized just how deep his problems went. He wasn't just trying to get $50,000 from me. He was drowning, and this was his last-ditch effort to stay afloat. I finally had the ammunition I needed. With Rachel's help, I compiled everything we found into a dossier. Proof of Jason's debt, his scams, his web of lies. And I prepared to send it to the same people he had targeted with his email. If Jason wanted to destroy me, he'd better be prepared for the fallout. But before I could hit send, I got another message from Jason. This time, it wasn't a threat. It was an invitation to meet. Jason's message wasn't what I expected. It wasn't another threat or some demand for money. It was a simple, cold invitation. "Meet me at the park tomorrow at 3. We need to talk." No explanation, no apology, just a time and place. I stared at the message, my stomach in knots. He had no reason to ask for a meeting unless he knew I was onto him. Maybe word had already started getting back to him about what I was digging up. Maybe someone he owed money to had tipped him off. Or worse, maybe this was another trap. Rachel was against it from the start. "This feels like a setup, Emily. Don't go. He's dangerous, and you know he's not thinking straight." I shook my head, pacing around my living room as I tried to process what the hell Jason could possibly want from me now. I need to see him. I need to end this face to face. I've got everything I need to blow his life apart, but I don't want to send it until I know what his angle is. Rachel crossed her arms, frowning. "I still don't like it. You know he's desperate. Who knows what he'll do if he feels cornered." I wasn't scared of Jason physically. He wasn't violent, and I doubted he'd pull anything in a public park. But mentally, emotionally, he was more dangerous than ever. He was smart, cunning, and now, with his back against the wall, he could be even more unpredictable. "I'll meet him," I said firmly, "but I'm not going in blind. I'll keep the evidence on me just in case." Rachel sighed but didn't argue further. "Fine, but I'm going with you. If things get weird, I'm stepping in." The next day, I arrived at the park around 2:50 p.m., Rachel trailing behind me but keeping her distance, watching from a bench far enough away that she wouldn't draw attention. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I scanned the park, looking for Jason. It was a sunny day, the kind of day where families were out playing, and couples were having picnics. The world seemed so normal, too normal, given what was about to happen. I spotted Jason sitting on a bench under a large oak tree, sunglasses on, casually scrolling through his phone like we weren't in the middle of an effing disaster. I swallowed the wave of anger rising in my chest and walked over to him, determined not to let him get the upper hand. He didn't look up until I stood right in front of him. "You actually came," he said, sounding mildly impressed. "I wasn't sure you would." I sat down on the opposite side of the bench, keeping a safe distance between us. "What do you want, Jason?" He sighed, taking off his sunglasses and rubbing his temples like he had a headache. "We're family, Emily. This has gotten out of hand. We need to stop this before it gets worse." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was the one saying it had gotten out of hand. After everything he'd done? "You're kidding, right? You sent an email accusing me of abuse. You stole $50,000 from me. And now you want to stop." He shifted uncomfortably, finally looking me in the eyes. For the first time in years, I saw a crack in his mask. Jason wasn't the smug, arrogant manipulator I was used to. He looked tired, almost beaten down. But I wasn't going to fall for his act. "I know I screwed up," he said quietly, "but I was desperate. You don't understand the kind of pressure I'm under." "I don't care about your pressure, Jason. You crossed a line, and now you're going to pay for it. I've got everything I need to take you down, every debt you owe, every scam you've pulled, all your lies. I'm not scared of you anymore." He flinched, and for a brief second, I thought I saw fear in his eyes. But then he leaned back, crossing his arms, and that familiar smirk crept back onto his face. "You think anyone's going to care about my debt? So what? I borrowed money and didn't pay it back. That's not going to erase what I've told people about you." "You mean the lies?" I shot back, my voice trembling with anger. "You made up that entire story, Jason. There's nothing to back it up, and you know it." His smirk didn't falter. "Doesn't matter if it's true. People believe what they want to believe. And right now, you're the villain in their eyes. I've already won." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. "You haven't won anything. If you push this any further, I'll go public with everything. You'll be exposed for the fraud you are. You'll never recover." Jason stared at me, his smirk fading, replaced by something darker, more sinister. "You're not hearing me, Emily. I don't need to recover. If I go down, I'll take you with me. All it takes is one interview, one tearful confession on social media, and you'll be fighting off accusations for the rest of your life. I'm giving you a chance to walk away." He was bluffing. He had to be, but something in his voice made me pause. Jason was a master manipulator, and if there was one thing I knew about him, it was that he always had an angle. There was no way he'd just let me walk away without getting something out of it. I leaned in, lowering my voice. "What do you really want, Jason? Money? You've already taken everything I had." He hesitated for a moment, his jaw tightening. Then he spoke, and his voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. "I need more than 50 grand, Emily. I need your help to get out of this mess. You've got connections, a stable job. People trust you. I need you to cover for me, help me get loans, vouch for me with a few people I owe. You do that, and I'll make this all disappear." I stared at him, disbelief washing over me. He was asking me to help him lie again, to dig him out of his hole so he could keep running his scams. The audacity of it made my skin crawl. He had burned every bridge, stolen from me, smeared my name, and now he wanted me to cover for him. To save him? I stood up, disgusted. "You're out of your mind if you think I'd ever help you after what you've done." Jason didn't move, his eyes narrowing as he watched me. "You're making a mistake. I'm offering you a way out, and you're throwing it away. If you walk out of here without agreeing to my terms, I'll burn it all down." I turned to leave, but his next words stopped me cold. "I wasn't bluffing about the abuse, you know. I've already talked to a lawyer. If you don't cooperate, I'll press charges." My blood ran cold. He had crossed every line imaginable, but this was something else. My brother, my own flesh and blood, was threatening to take me to court over a lie. A lie that, once in the system, would be impossible to fully shake off, no matter how baseless it was. I turned back slowly, my voice barely above a whisper. "You really think you can get away with this?" He stood up now, his eyes hard and unyielding. "I already have." For a moment, the world seemed to spin around me. The ground felt like it was slipping away, like everything I had built was about to collapse. Jason wasn't just bluffing. He was ready to go nuclear, and if I didn't find a way to stop him, he'd drag me down with him. I took a deep breath, calming the storm inside me. "You're a coward, Jason. You've always been a coward, and when this is over, you'll have nothing." He smirked again, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "We'll see about that." I walked away, my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel Rachel's eyes on me from across the park as I made my way toward the exit. I wasn't sure what my next move would be, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let Jason win. Not this time. That night, I couldn't sleep. Jason's threats hung over me like a dark cloud, the weight of his words crushing any hope I had of a clean escape from this nightmare. My own brother was willing to drag me through the courts, destroy my reputation, and turn our family against me. And why? because he was too selfish, too desperate to fix his own mess without ruining someone else's life. The worst part? I knew he could do it. In today's world, all it took was an accusation. Truth didn't matter. Once his lie was out there, I'd be forever stained by it. Even if I proved he was lying, the damage would be done. As I sat in my apartment, staring at the dossier I had compiled on Jason, proof of his debts, scams, and manipulations, I realized that this wasn't about winning anymore. It was about survival. I had one last move, and I needed to play it carefully. By morning, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to let Jason dictate the terms of this war. If he wanted to take me down, I'd make sure he'd burn alongside me. But I had to be smart, and I needed backup. I called Rachel. "I've made up my mind," I said, pacing around my apartment, the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "We're going public, but I'm not sending the dossier to the family. Not yet." Rachel was silent for a moment, processing. "Then, what's the plan?" I took a deep breath. "We need to hit him where it hurts. If I go straight to the family, he'll spin it, turn them against me. But if I expose him to the people he really owes, the loan sharks, the ones who could actually make his life hell, that's a whole different game." Rachel's voice was cautious. "That's risky, Emily. You're talking about some dangerous people. What if it backfires?" I clenched my jaw. "It won't. Jason's desperate because he knows these people are closing in on him. If they find out what he's done, how he's scammed everyone in his life and used their money for his own personal gain, he'll be the one running scared, not me." We spent the next few hours carefully crafting the email. We didn't just attach the dossier. We framed it as a warning. Jason had borrowed money from all the wrong people, and we wanted them to know he had no intention of paying them back. We laid out his financial scams, his manipulations, everything we'd uncovered about his underhanded dealings. I knew that once they saw it, the consequences would be swift and brutal. With the email ready, I hovered over the send button, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it, the final move. "You're sure about this?" Rachel asked, her voice tight with concern. "I don't have a choice," I whispered, staring at the screen. "If I don't do this, he'll destroy me." I hit send. The fallout was immediate. Within hours, I started getting notifications. Some of the people Jason owed had responded, shocked and furious. They hadn't realized they were all being played by the same man. Others sent back thinly veiled threats, promising that Jason's days of running and hiding were over. The pressure was mounting, and I knew it was only a matter of time before Jason felt it. I didn't have to wait long. That evening, I received a call from Jason. I answered it on the first ring, my pulse racing. "You Pankin B," he snarled. His voice was shaking, filled with a rage I hadn't heard from him before. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I know exactly what I've done," I said, my voice cold, unwavering. "I've exposed you. They all know now, Jason. Every lie, every scam. And they're coming for you. You think this is over," he spat. "You think I won't drag you down with me? You have no idea what you're messing with." I could hear the panic in his voice, the desperation creeping in. He was scared, and that was exactly what I wanted. "You're out of moves," I said calmly. "I gave you a chance to make this right, but you chose to threaten me, to lie, and destroy everything I've built. Now you get to live with the consequences." He was silent for a moment, and I could almost hear him seething on the other end of the line. "You think those people will just take your word for it? You think they won't come after you too? I'm not the one who owes them money, Jason. You are, and I have the proof to back it up. All of it." There was a long pause before Jason spoke again, his voice low and venomous. "This isn't over, Emily. I swear to God, I'll make sure you regret this." I hung up, my hands shaking. I knew it wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had the upper hand. 2 days later, everything came crashing down. I hadn't heard from Jason since that phone call, but I had expected that. He was laying low, trying to figure out his next move. Meanwhile, the people he owed were closing in, demanding answers, demanding money. His life was unraveling faster than I had ever imagined. Then came the phone call from my mom. I didn't want to answer it. I had avoided her and my dad since the meeting with Jason, not ready to face their doubt, their disappointment. But something about this call felt different. Urgent. When I picked up, I immediately heard the panic in her voice. "Emily, it's Jason. He's in the hospital." I froze. "What? What happened?" He tried to kill himself." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I sank to the floor, my heart pounding in my ears. Is he okay?" "He's alive," my mom said, her voice trembling. "But they don't know if he's going to make it. The doctor said it was close." I didn't know what to feel. Relief? Guilt? Anger? It was all crashing together, a storm of emotions I couldn't process. Jason had pushed me to the edge, and now he had pushed himself over it. "I'm coming," I whispered, hanging up the phone. When I arrived at the hospital, the air was heavy with tension. My parents were in the waiting room, huddled together, looking more fragile than I had ever seen them. My mom stood when she saw me, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "They're saying he might wake up." But she didn't finish the sentence, and she didn't have to. We both knew there was no guarantee Jason would pull through. I sat down next to her, my mind spinning. This was what it had come to. Jason had always been a manipulator, a liar, a thief, but he was still my brother. And now, as I sat there in the sterile hospital waiting room, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe I had pushed him too far. Maybe, in my desperation to save myself, I had destroyed him. But then, I thought about everything he had done. The lies, the blackmail, the threats. He had tried to ruin me, and I had fought back. I hadn't started this war, but I had ended it. Hours passed, and finally, a doctor emerged from the ICU. "He's stable," the doctor said, her voice gentle. "He's not out of the woods yet, but for now, he's going to be okay." My mom collapsed into tears, and my dad pulled her into a hug. I sat there, numb. Jason was alive, but everything had changed. There was no going back now, no reconciliation, no fixing the damage. Our family had been shattered beyond repair, and I wasn't sure it could ever be put back together. As I left the hospital that night, I felt a strange sense of emptiness. I had won, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. And maybe, in the end, that was all I could hope for.